Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuning In with Bob Lancer and Dr. Greg Nielsen. I'm Bob Lancer, and
Dr. Greg Nielsen. You can call me whatever you want.
okay,
Just call me Johnson.
just don't call you late for dinner.
That's right.
All right, and we're going to be discussing on this podcast the transition that humanity seems to be going through, going into energy being consciousness. And we'll be explaining what that means and why it's so important. Greg has written a number of books on the subject. I've written a couple of books as well. And one of the things that we're going to be doing on this podcast is discussing the work.
Gotta get my
Yeah.
hmm.
Yeah, I'm slightly voice compromised on this, our first podcast together, but
I'm brain compromised. So
so one of the things that we're going to be focusing on is the work of Isidore Friedman. Both of us were privileged to work with Isidore. Until I met Isidore, I don't think I even knew what tuning in really meant.
Yeah, in fact, I was thinking about it today, going, I'm not sure when I first came across the idea of tuning in. I know I had a feeling like, what? I can tune in. I mean, and then there was the analogy of the radio frequency, and you can move it, AM, FM. And first I went like, I'm like a radio. I mean, I was so not aware, and that's fine. I just didn't know. But that concept of possibly putting your attention on a certain frequency was revolutionary. And I know Isidore, that was one of his main points, obviously, and any good teacher. Sure.
So, you and I were privileged to work with Isidore directly,
Yeah.
one-on-one. We would go to his apartment in
Yeah.
Seagate, Brooklyn, New York, sit at his card table.
Climb up the stairs.
Climb up the stairs. Yep. And I remember in the early days, he would actually go up and down the stairs with us and copy from his notebooks.
Yep.
These wisdom notebooks. And so I felt it was kind of a responsibility of ours, because I don't know of anybody else who had as close a relationship with Isidore who's still here.
Yeah.
And, he was an amazing teacher that nobody really knows about. What about Izzy's teachings impressed you or affected you or changed you?
Well, the number one thing at first there's several things, but number one that stands out in my memory is the fact that he really had ways of actually applying knowledge.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed in my early 20s with the idea of knowledge. I thought I knew something because I had the idea of knowledge.
Yeah.
But when I started looking at his material and going, wow, I got a long way to go here. I mean, maybe several lifetimes at least. So I began the transition because of him and his emphasis on function, doing, applying your knowledge to your day-to-day life with people, with situations, with events. And that was, to me, the number one thing that struck me. Like, if I'm really going to continue on this path, well, he's got a good direction here for us. So
yeah, I remember one time he said to me, Bobby, I don't know anything, but I know that structure, function, order is God.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
So
and I'm with you there. And exactly. And to this day, of course, that's something I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, and uncovering things that I'm not that structured about, not that functional about, and not that ordered about. And I go, I didn't even see that. It's been like 50 years. It's like, okay.
What was it about? How did you meet Isidore? I was introduced to Isidore. I was working as a lifeguard on the beach at Seagate, and Joe Polanski, who recently passed away, he was working as a beach guard.
Oh.
And he would sit there, and people would have to show their passes to get onto the beach. And Joe and I happened to meet. We were both working at the beach, and he told me about this teacher that he had. And I was very interested. And then the next day there was Isidore on the beach. And I asked him about, what is the secret of tell me about life? Very arrogant young man. Tell me about life. Tell me about the universe. And he proceeded to blow my mind. He just had an answer for everything, and it was all structure, function, order.
You do have that look about you, that blown mind look, which I consider a positive.
Yeah, I haven't recovered yet.
It is All Saints Day, so
That's true. That's true. So
yeah.
how did you meet Isidore?
Let's see. I'm with my memory. Let's see here. Uh, see, I think it was around early 70s, early 1970s. Um, the story goes that he used to go to a Weiser's bookstore in Greenwich Village.
Yep.
It was later I joined the ritual of going to the store with him, having breakfast and so on. But he met with a fella who was a worker in the store who knew who I was beginning to learn from. His name was Francois. And he wanted to get Izzy and Francois together to share and to learn about each other, because it was anytime you could find someone on the path that'd be a buddy,
Mm-hmm.
a friend, a fellow traveler was a good thing. So he got the two of them together, and he was invited by Francois to come speak to the people that we were meeting with in his small group at the time. And he came and talked, and it was like, okay, this guy's got a lot of good stuff. And I know Francois embraced it and thought, wow, this is very helpful to my young people. Most of us were in our 20s that were there, and all of us had great ideas, and we loved the ideas of doing these things, and it just sounded very inspiring. But we didn't have what Izzy brought out on a regular basis. Here's something you can try and apply. So that's how we met. Because
Mm-hmm.
that group, I really enjoyed meeting him. I didn't know I would go on to study with him at the time, but it was definitely a wonderful first meeting as far as coming to speak with us.
Yeah, the thing that always stood out with me was just the feeling I had in
Mm.
his presence. I felt so clear and attuned, and it would be times when it would feel like my top of my head was on fire.
Mm-hmm.
The energy was so intense, so deep,
Yeah.
so clear. Did you have that kind of experience as far as on a feeling level with Isidore?
Oh yeah. There's a tradition in the Eastern religions of darshan, which
Mhm,
is the presence of the teacher.
mhm.
Their energy field, talk about tuning in,
Yeah.
their energy field is so developed, or higher, if you want to put it that way, than most of the people around them. Those who come in their presence, they can feel that energy. And I had experienced some of that before with other teachers.
Hmm.
His was very grounded,
Mhm,
felt very energized, very focused, especially afterward.
mhm.
Wow, okay, I'm carrying this energy temporarily of feeling aligned, and this
Right.
feels pretty darn good. I wasn't in a place at that point where I could do that myself, because I was not really on the path that long or developed myself that much. But
Mhm.
it definitely told me something. That feeling told me there's something here for me. And that's what I started to follow.
So as you,
That's a yes.
what's that?
That's a yes.
That's a yes. So,
Yeah.
so, so, I thought maybe I would read one of Isidore's poems to
Mm-hmm.
give people a sense of his energy and where he came from. Um, did he ever tell you where the songs of the Star Lords came from? How he came to write these?
I don't really recall, although because I studied poetry and loved poetry and started writing poetry very young. In fact, I have a new book of poetry coming out. That's something we joined and resonated together too. And I loved the way he wrote his poems. It was so elevating, but very beautifully structured at the same time and
Mhm,
natural. But
mhm.
we talked about poetry, but I didn't ask him where it came from. I'm assuming he was inspired
Well,
by reading it. Yeah.
what he told me
Okay.
was that but when he was writing songs of the Star Lords, that all the different, as well
Yeah.
as his book Percepton,
Oh yeah. For some time.
what he told me was each night he'd be taken out of his body
Oh.
and he'd be shown what he was writing about.
Oh wow. Yeah.
He would actually watch the cosmic process.
Oof. Yeah. I
So
didn't know about that, but that sure makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm just gonna open one at random
For sure.
and see where we are. And well, this one has This is a short one. Oh, that's interesting. This is the page that I opened it up to.
Mm.
This book was sent to me and to my partner Zoe by Nancy Dahlberg.
Oh,
And this
yeah.
note that she included, it says, "Dear Bob and Zoe, enjoy your books. May your wisdom multiply. Peace, love, and light, Nancy." And so Nancy was also one of Isidor's students. She lived with him for a while, and
Oh, yeah.
well, she was lived with you for a while too.
Yeah.
You were both from Minnesota, right? Both.
Right. Exactly. Although I didn't know her when I was in Minnesota.
I thought you moved here with her. Oh,
No, no, no.
I moved to New York
That's
with her.
that's a whole nother story how I got to New York, but yeah, the Minnesota connection was there. So yeah.
Okay. So this is a very short one, and it's not well. Let's do this is Starfruit 9. The lie in thought and word and deed maim and distort true decency's creed. Its backwash creates a living hell beyond power of tongue and word to tell. We talk and know not what we say, build a negative field this negative way. And when its events precipitate in our life, we blame and complain in sick, wordy strife. The words come out, mad verbal rush, and destroy the wisdom in the silence hush. We criticize blind in angry heat, thus the negative polarities we incessantly meet. We spew forth volumes of verbal slime that rots our nerves with acid grime, evoke negative forces with all our talk, which then with evil begin us to stalk. And this automatic thought, emotion, and deed destroy the fulfillment of our every need. Like parrots, raucous, irate, screech, we maim and kill with our unconscious speech.
Hmm.
You
Well, I
don't
think
see writing like that. Most people don't talk about the grime and the slime like Isidore.
no, no, no. You have to take a look, and that kind of awareness really brings you to working through it. So you have to notice it. It seems to me it's very important to notice, and he really lays it out there. And that's another thing I really appreciated about him. He was able to express how you attract the difficulties in your life, the
Okay,
so-called bad.
how? So from what we just read,
Yeah.
how do people attract difficulties in their life according to organics,
Yeah.
which
Well,
is
you
the
just
name of Isidore's teaching?
well, and going to that poem there, just your thought, your speech, your beliefs, your viewpoints, you are like a resonant frequency, or you're like what would you call it? Like a magnet attracting the very things that you talk about, think about, believe in, and the consequences of that. And the poem really indicates it might be time not to blame anybody else, maybe not blame or criticize yourself too heavily, but at least acknowledge that this is part of what you're doing with your life day to day. I mean, of course, you can look at the society, the culture, the family belief systems, but ultimately you are the decider, the chooser, the creator of your own reality is probably what some people say. And that poem really lays it out. I mean, and if you're not experiencing that, here's the reason why.
Right,
That's what I saw. Yeah.
right. So many people talk, many people complain, they criticize without realizing that what they're talking about is actually bringing upon them more of what they don't want, more difficulty, more
Bob,
problems.
that was very well said. Beautifully said. Yeah, that's just tough nut to crack for some people. For me, when I finally got to begin to get a hold of that view, I started through self-observation and noticing what I was saying, what I was thinking, and catching myself doing some of the things that poem was talking about. I'm going, oh, it started to become about my own life and how I live, as opposed to it's out there somewhere. It's inside and how I live my life.
Yeah, which can be very empowering.
Oh, yeah, because it develops some degree of self-knowledge,
Mhm.
which is part of the old Greek philosophy.
Know thyself.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when after studying with Isidore for about 7 years, I had this epiphany, and that was in New York, where I was born and raised. I had this epiphany to go to Phoenix, Arizona,
Oh,
open a wisdom bookstore.
I
And you
remember that. Yeah.
visited us out there.
Spoke there a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I started teaching. And
Hmm.
I remember how, and at that time, this was in the 1980s, like the new age was burgeoning out there, new
Oh,
age.
big time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember how people would be put off by the darkness that he would talk about. You know,
Hmm.
I just wanted to hear the sweetness and light.
Yeah.
But he would talk about how it is we find ourselves in this moil and toil and a difficult life just by unconscious speech,
Hmm.
and realize the power of our speech, how it can affect us.
Oh, yeah. And listening to other people's unconscious speech and taking it in as if it means anything.
Right,
So
right.
that's one of the hallmarks of an overall path. And that tradition goes way back too. But someone like a Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist, talked about that same thing. He calls it the shadow, just
Mhm,
facing the dark side of yourself or the unconscious part of yourself, not in this way of self-criticism or self-hate or self-doubt, but just gently looking and noticing.
mhm,
And Buddhism is like that too.
mhm,
But he really nailed it because he just put it out so clean and clear.
mhm. Yeah, I remember him. I remember him quoting his teacher. Did he ever talk to you about his experience with the Tibetan Buddhist priest that he studied with?
Yeah, he did a few times. I didn't really ask about it, but he did bring it up a couple of times. Yeah.
One of the things that he shared was um, unconscious experience is like a bald man's comb.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah, and he put it in his notebooks too. He wrote that line out in
Yeah,
his notebooks. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So tell us about the books you've written. I think the
okay.
first book, if I recall correctly, the first book you wrote was it Meta Business, or was it Tuning into Spiritual Frequencies? What was the first book you wrote, you published?
The early 1970s was a book called Pyramid Power.
Oh, okay, that
Yeah.
one.
I go way back. Yeah.
Mhm,
And that was through the person who was the bookstore salesperson. Uh, his first name was Alfred. I forget the last name.
yeah, yeah.
EAD. Um, he connected with someone who wanted to develop a publishing company with some of the material that was available through Weiser's bookstore. So the first one they wanted to come out with was Pyramid Power. So I had the opportunity to work with him to help develop that book. It's not my favorite book, but it certainly still sells. I mean, I like that part.
It's been out for a long. Was it a bestseller at one point, or?
It sold in the hundreds of thousands.
Uh-huh.
It's still sold around the world.
And it was
Uh,
kind of an energy approach to the pyramids, right?
yeah, it looked at pyramids a little bit differently than just nice, seventh wonder symbols of Egypt and that type of thing. But tried to go a little deeper, like why was it there? Who put it there? What was the purpose of it? It sort of tied in with Egyptian religion, which in its inner core, its esoteric side, was very wonderful for its time, in my opinion. So
Uh-huh.
that book, that was my first book. The
Uh-huh.
more recent books is what you brought up.
But you
When
also
I
wrote
started,
Pendulum Power too, correct?
yeah, oh yeah, exactly. Pendulum Power came followed that,
And
and
pendulums. Isidore must have introduced. He introduced me to the pendulum.
yes, he introduced me to pendulum. Exactly.
I never took to it,
Yeah, everybody takes a different
but you
thing.
seem to really you really adopted it.
I did. I got
Mhm.
into it. I wrote a second book called Beyond Pendulum Power because I saw, in my view, the value of why was I interested in the pendulum and what it had done for me. It helped cultivate my intuition to some degree, and which made me realize people cultivate their intuitive side, just that awareness of things are beyond the five senses.
Uh-huh.
Uh, there's many ways to do that, and so
Uh-huh.
some sort of divination process can sometimes open that up for people.
So, what would
So,
you use the pendulum for? How would the pendulum help you? What would you use the pendulum to assist you in? What sort of questions?
oh my goodness, I wrote two books on it. I should think of some.
I know, I know.
I would say one of the most beneficial things is like life decisions. Here's
Mhm.
a situation. Here are, say, me three choices. And Isidore you helped us to help me develop not just yes no questions, because life is not that simple that often, a little more level. So he got it or developed it. I hadn't seen it too many places. Kind of a scale reading system on a 0 to 10 scale.
Right.
What
That's
would
right.
be the wisdom of following this path based on the current conditions?
Mhm.
So there might be 3 paths, there might be 4, might be 2. You can, and your intellect can go in a spin trying to figure out, well, I could be this, it could be this, it could be that. But the idea of the pendulum was to tune in to the wisdom of the energy that would be wisest in the circumstance. So that's probably the number one area that I found useful. And of course, you can apply that to anything, whether
Mhm.
it's relationships,
Mhm.
healthcare, work, basic life decisions in terms of your work and career. I mean, it goes on and on. The
So it's
books.
almost like dowsing for wisdom.
Exactly, dowsing for wisdom, and that connected us. Speaking of that, of course, it connected us to the American Society of Dowsers, who a
Mhm.
lot of those people love the pendulum for that reason. I mean, it's not
Mhm.
just about water dowsing, which
Mhm.
was
Or
common,
oil, or
or
oil.
oil. Yeah.
Mhm.
So most
Mhm.
of the people I met in that group were much wider in their scope and liked the pendulum power, liked beyond pendulum power, liked the way Izzy had brought up things and trained people, at least me, and I could pass that on to open up to a wider viewpoint, not just going for water, which was a useful tool as well. But
Yeah,
yeah,
for
so
because I was never, I could never really catch on to the pendulum, but
yeah,
what I developed in the mid '80s was something called the Kabbalah cards.
yes, I still have them and I love them. Yeah,
Yeah. And so it works the same way, but it's connected to the tree of life. Like I might
exactly.
say now, like, what would be a good direction for us to go in the conversation? So I got 3 to 5,
Hmm.
wisdom to understanding. I mean, understanding to severity. And what that suggests is understanding what we need to eliminate. What are the thought patterns, the understandings, the ways of thinking and understanding the world that we need to eliminate?
Hmm.
What does that suggest to you? Where do you go with that? What,
Slow
even
down.
your own personal experiences, when you notice certain
Yeah,
thoughts and ideas coming to you, say, no, not that one. No, I'm not going to let that one go.
yeah.
No, I'm not going to go there.
Uh, Not as much now, but still on a regular basis, getting what's the word? Kind of caught in a vortex of can't make up my mind, or it triggers a fear. So my mind is like racing. Well, how about this? Or how about that? Or how about this? Is this right? Is this wrong? Then you catch yourself and go like, wait a minute, let that go. Let it go. Because what you're doing is you're ingraining it within yourself more, number one. Number two, you're really not finding anything practical here.
Mhm.
So if you're gonna tune in, you got to tune that out.
Mm. So
And
now it takes us back to tuning in. So
yeah,
how does thought interfere with tuning in?
yeah, well,
Tuning in
because
for guidance, tuning in to make a choice. If I
yeah,
want to consider, should I go to the movies tonight or should I read a book? And I want to tune in to get my answer.
yeah, the tuning in process, of course, is similar but very different for everybody. But for me, it's letting go of the continuous stream of thought to some degree, just slowing it down, just observe it coming in, coming out, coming in, coming out. Went through my mind, or whatever you want to call it, through my force field of thought and energy, and letting it go. So it gets into the thing of non identification. You don't have to identify if you don't want. I mean,
What,
that's
what
a
does it
choice.
mean to not identify with a thought? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, you can notice it, but not embrace it where you put your attention on it for 2 or 3 hours. I mean, I do have friends of mine who can, and I do this too. I mean, worry about something
Hmm.
or get like obsessive in their thinking, or something bothers them about a situation, and they just go in a continuous, I guess, squirrel cage type of
Mhm.
thing, uh, like what do you call it? Like some animal in a squirrel cage.
Hamster in his cage. Yeah.
Hamsters, that's a
Vitvan
hamster.
used to call it squirrel caging.
Yeah, squirrel caging, and just
Yeah.
go on and on. And of course, over time, I would
Right.
catch myself do this. At the earlier part, when I knew about it intellectually, but when I actually started to see myself do it, was well, oh, that's what they're talking about. Because I
Mhm.
thought I should do this to figure it out.
Right. To try to figure. Yeah. I used to say, Indecision is the worst decision you can make,
Yeah.
because just going back and like a ping pong game in your mind, going back and forth.
Mhm.
And Vitvan would talk about how in order to receive that higher knowing, that feel knowing, that
Mhm.
perceptive cognition, the information we get when we truly tune in, the knowing that we get, that the mind has to be like a still lake that
Mhm.
reflect the light of the heavens.
Mhm.
Mind is still, we can receive higher insight just by putting our attention on
Mhm.
something and be guided along that path of
And
energy.
Izzy would talk about attention without tension.
What does that
And
mean to you?
to me, it means just you're you're not really into automatic thinking and giving it so much value that you think you're going to get an answer from it somehow, or you're going to figure it out. You're simply noticing in the moment. And when your mind starts to wander, you just bring it back without being too rigid about it either. Because some people go like they get really, I can't think at all. I'm bad if I think. No,
That was
just
me. That was me. That was my
and it's
Aries nature. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like okay, it
Yeah.
does take time, and it's I don't well, you can call it a muscle, a skill that you can develop over time more and more.
Yeah.
And even now, I mean, even though I'm aware of it, and I'm much more in the moment than I used to be. I went for a walk the other day along the river. It was beautiful, and I must have gone a good half mile. I don't think I even paid attention to the river or the trees or the ground. Or I don't even remember what I was thinking about, to be honest with you. I mean, I
Mhm.
felt great because I
Yeah.
felt the outdoors and so on. But I said, I can't. What did I just think about? I don't. I was on an automatic thinking spin. Some
Yeah.
people get that when they drive a car. They go from point A to point B, and they go, "Oh, okay, I'm here.
Yeah.
What was I thinking the whole time between there and there?" Yeah.
I think some people go a life.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And
They
what
wake up
astounds
dead. They wake
what
up.
astounds yeah.
Where did that go?
What astounds me is how much I've known that for so long, but still fall into it. And one of the things I've learned is you don't have to criticize yourself for it, just notice it. Because I think when I was younger, I was, oh, darn, I can't believe I did that. Now I'm making it more.
Mhm.
So you compound it. So, but going back to Vitvan, of course, he wrote this book, Science and Sanity, 1933. And as far as I'm
That
concerned,
was that was that was Korzibsky.
Korzybski.
Oh,
Yeah,
science
right.
and sanity.
Oh, yeah, Vitvan got some of his teaching through Korzybski. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, and well, Isidore too. I mean, the
Oh,
work
yeah.
so grounded in general semantics.
Yeah. I was stunned when I read the book the first time.
Yeah.
How, what would be the word? Full of gluey words. And when I would read the book and Vitvan's material too, I'd feel like the word identifications were kind of released.
Hmm.
It's like a feeling of fresh air.
The word is not the thing.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that seemed like over time, it seemed like Isidore got more and more of his writing and his teaching was just more and more general semantics.
Yeah.
Didn't it seemed less and less into like the higher mystical realms, so to speak.
Yeah, and Vitvan talked about that when he went through a process of changing. Apparently his son, one of his sons, introduced him to Alfred Korzibsky in his Science and Sanity book, and
Oh.
it really made an impression on him. He completely changed his teachings. He stopped using what they call high order abstraction words like we should all love, we should
Mhm.
all understand,
What does that mean?
Yeah, and of course it sounds wonderful. You get like a
Mhm.
pie in the sky vibe out of it, but he realized that's not going to communicate
The function,
function.
back to structure
Skill.
function.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's just recount all the books that you've
Oh,
written.
okay.
A lot of them, are they all available on Amazon? Or?
Yeah, I have, I think must be 6, 7, 8 books on Amazon. And then I have 10 more books that are on my Patreon, which you can go there and see them in all different topics. So what's nice is, I think you do some of this too. You do self-publishing.
You know, I just haven't really had the patience to publish.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a few books. I have several books
Oh
out.
yeah. I
Um,
know you have the book on the Kabbalah, which I love.
yeah, but I have a couple
That's,
of books. I have the Soulmate Process, Inner Freedom Through Kabbalah, Lighten Up is one of my books. The Kabbalah cards. But I got to a point where the publishing I do now is weekly lessons,
Oh, that's perfectly.
and I just send it right out to people, and
Yeah.
that's good enough for me. I don't need to go to all that complicated.
Yeah, I guess part of my nature is that by tiny little steps, I learned how to do the process. So each time I have a book done, I like say 10 of them, of course, I just publish so people can see them up on Patreon. I'm not going to publish everything.
Let me just
But certain ones I publish. I know the steps. I know how to do it. I've been doing it since 1970.
right.
No hurry. There's no
Right.
publication date.
Yep.
All digital. I have people that I can get to do the book design, the cover design. I use a digital printer, but I go by little minute steps. And so, like you say, you're publishing. It's
Yeah.
just mediums of publishing. You can publish weekly, you can publish in a magazine, you can publish lessons for people. And that's what I do on the Patreon. Just get things out on a nice rhythmic basis without worrying about a book. Book is just one way.
Yeah.
Do it. I got in the habit of doing that, so I know what to do.
Yeah, I might follow up with you to get some of my lessons put together into a book.
Oh,
I
yeah.
also do a lot of publishing on YouTube. I do a lot of
Yep.
Zoom seminars. I do Zoom seminars every week. I just completed 2 phases of tarot meditations for cosmic consciousness and a life that works perfectly.
Oh,
Kind of
wonderful.
bold
Yeah.
promise.
No, that's wonderful. Yeah, exactly. And we have so many wonderful mediums today. Like, using YouTube is just incredible. I probably spend an hour a day on YouTube.
It's like the Library of Alexandria.
Yeah, I can go to almost virtually any topic.
It's incredible.
Somebody brought up Krishnamurti. So what did Krishnamurti say? Boom, there's a YouTube video on, get a little introduction, so on and so forth. There's Vitvan stuff up there. I mean, yeah, you can.
On YouTube?
Oh, yeah. His stuff is not, I would say maybe there's 15 or 20 audio
right
tapes, or what do you want to call it, on YouTube. On the website for the School of the Natural Order, and I'm not sure recently, I haven't looked there recently, but for years, virtually every book that he ever wrote was up there in an audio form.
Yeah.
So there was plenty of material.
Still is.
Yeah, still is. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Isidore introduced us to, I guess, in a way, I guess we could say, the energy world.
Oh, yeah,
Functioning
definitely.
as it started. I remember he had an incredible library, as you remember.
Oh, beautiful.
Multiple books.
Beautiful.
And he would bring out a book, and he would say, "Bobby, put your hand over the book." Did he do that with you? And like, tell me, is it too intellectual? Is it grounded? Is it spiritual? And it would always be accurate. Like, I could just tell. And that's been guiding my reading ever since.
Yep. And that's part of that process of I call it becoming an energy being. We're all energy beings. We don't really have to become, but we can develop our awareness of registering energy. And when you start to develop that skill, it's a wonderful form of freedom, because you sense it, you feel it, you know it. And you don't know it in a dogmatic way. You know it in just a gentle feeling way, I guess you could say. And then you can always re-navigate. I mean, it's not that it's always stuck in that same energy, but it's a wonderful tool. And I know, some people are born as energy beings. I mean, they're there. I meet people and they're going, wow, these people are amazing. They're not even aware of it sometimes. They don't even know how to navigate it, but they feel, they walk into a store, they can feel it. They're around a person, they can feel it. And that's part of being an energy being. We need to be able to navigate the energy world in order to have a healthier, more balanced life, in my opinion. So,
yeah. Well, yeah, even to know which store to walk into.
Yeah. And sometimes different times of the day, different places.
And that goes back to Korzibsky's, getting us linguistically trained to the reality that everything is constantly changing. Every moment is now. Isidore used to say, we don't live in a world of things that are changing. We live in a world of change that is thinging. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I think he has it in his notebooks too. Yeah.
So that we remember to tune in, not just because someone gave us the idea and told us it's going to be great. Before I walk in the door, I get a feel for what's right and what's wrong for me right now.
And to me, that's one of the beauties of choosing to be aware, choosing to be conscious, choosing to be in the moment, making that as one of the top priorities of your life. because you can make those changes. Korzibsky called it the infinite value orientation.
Mhm.
Just in the moment, in the now, as much as possible. If you're not, you notice you're not, you go back and you
Mhm.
go back and you stay there as much as you can. You build it up. And over time, you get a sense of what's happening and you can navigate in the moment, moment to moment,
And so
whatever.
how would you if a person wants to be able to guide their life based on tuning in,
Mhm.
how would you suggest they start?
Well, I think some of the, first of all, everybody's so unique how they can do that. But there are some universal steps that pretty much apply to almost every philosophy, religion, inner belief system, esoteric paths, whatever you want to call them. You have to be able to observe yourself, observe how you think, observe how you speak, observe how you feel, observe the energy you're feeling in that situation. I would say slowly and gently, if you can do it more and more each day, you get to know yourself, and through self-reflection, self-observation. That to me is pretty much universal. It opens the door to realize everything's not out there only, but there's something going on in your what you see or do or tract out there has a lot to do with how you're speaking, how you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you're emoting, how your body's, is it tense, is it relaxed, and so on. So you
Mhm.
begin to discover there's a relationship between how you are minute to minute, moment to moment, and what you're attracting in
Mm.
the everyday world. That's that. So I would say that's number one. On the other hand, I also see that people need to follow their unique path, and if they need to read inspirational books too,
Mhm.
get them started, they read maybe some, I don't know, the Dhammapada by the Buddha or whatever it might be, or it can be anything because they're attracted to. It might be part of how their path unfolds.
Mhm.
And I like to leave it alone and just share, but ultimately they do have to take on the challenge of noticing themselves and how
Noticing
they
yourself in the now,
in the now, in the now.
noticing this practice. There seems to be opposition to awakening,
Oh,
opposition to energy awakening, spiritual awakening.
oh
What's,
yeah.
what's that about?
Oh, that's a long one. I don't know. It's a
Yeah,
long.
it seems like the whole world. I remember when I was studying with Isidor
Yeah.
and getting very deeply into it. I really caught me by surprise that out of nowhere, I was talking to my father about it, and he turned around and he said, "It's either Isidore or us." Like
Either or.
I had to choose between the path that felt right to me or
Yeah.
being accepted by my family.
Well, yeah, that's part of the process for some
Yeah.
people.
It's the
Yeah,
individualizing process, right? The
yeah,
work to
individuation.
keep us
Yeah,
part of the herd, right?
yeah. And there's a lot of value to it ultimately because you're rubbing up against what would you call it? Difficult situations, let's put it that way. Things that discourage you from really being individuated, to being your full self and the way you could develop creatively, emotionally, feeling wise, uh, speaking wisely, because you're coming from a place energetically where the words are forming from there.
Mhm.
And the world around us wants us to be part of the herd. I mean, it goes on for centuries. I mean, just you can go on, you can spend years studying that, but then I guess enough is enough at a certain point. Just let that go and let the people do what they got to do. But the beauty of it ultimately is it kind of you hit your head up against it, and you start to feel pain on different levels, or you feel like, whoa, this is not my path. This doesn't feel good. I
Mhm.
feel tired. I feel drained. I feel not energized. I feel, they can live a whole lifetime of not really doing what they in their heart want to do.
So,
From a,
so you bring up a really
yeah.
interesting point of how a conscious energy being makes decisions in life.
Mm-hmm.
Is it energizing? Do I feel balanced? Do I feel whole? Does this feel deeply congruent to me rather than this is what my parents expect of me? This is what society expects of me. What is the path in life that's going to make me the most money, bring me the
Mm-hmm.
most fame, get to
Yeah.
me the most beautiful mates? It's a
Mm-hmm.
different, it's the energy orientation
Yeah.
It's just a big dropping away of the
Mhm.
values, that
Well,
people project on things.
I know that just recently I'm still teach. I've taught at the university, different schools, high school, middle school, and so on. And that's one of the things I'll tell students, especially seniors in high school or people in college early on. Do you really want to be here? Are you here because your parents want you to be here? In my opinion, be here because you want to be here. You can always go back to college. What do you really want to do? I asked somebody recently as a senior in high school. Well, my parents want me to go to college, but I really want to be a designer. Well, yeah. Can you show me something? She had a picture. I said, wow, that's beautiful. You should do that. I said, you can have your parents call me. Here's my card. I figure I'm old enough where I can get away with it. But
Yeah, so you can see this diverging,
yeah.
divergence of sort of what is it like? I'm trying to remember the language Vitvan used of just projecting values onto the outer world, thinking
Hmm.
it's going to bring me something
Yeah.
instead of following the energy path of harmony,
Hmm.
like the awakening, the ability to just feel that sense of harmony.
Yeah. He talked about going to knowing through feeling.
Yeah.
I think that's right on. Your feelings, if you can be conscious of it, and that goes back to self-observation, self-reflection, yeah, you can notice it. I don't feel very good about this. I mean, simple little things like, whoops, lost the connection there.
I see you. You're still with me.
Okay, should try to figure out how to get back up there. Sorry about that.
That's
Huh,
okay.
just popped out. Here we go. Oh, okay. I discovered that when my phone goes off, I should probably leave it in the other room. It's connected to my laptop because it's
Mm.
iMac, and an iMac, and they sometimes next time I'll leave it in the other room. I don't think I need to have it in here. But what were we talking about?
Well, one of the things that
I'm unconscious.
right. Well, one of the things that is so remarkable, you and I were talking about like YouTube earlier, like the Library of Alexandria, all the wisdom. I mean, I remember going to Weiser's,
Oh yeah.
1970s and
Hmm.
spending way too much money on
Oh yeah, I spent a fortune in that place.
and
Loved
just
it.
come home with bags and bags of books.
Yeah,
But there was no one other than Isidore or you or maybe Joe or Nancy to talk to about it.
exactly. Yeah, I very early on I found out that you're not going to have someone to talk to about it on a day-to-day basis all the time. So whoever you could meet would be, it's very energizing, very encouraging. You're not the only one because we have the thing where we don't want to be the only one
Mhm.
until you get really connected to your inner source, inner self more. Uh, then you can really feel strong about being somewhat not lonely, but more alone with what you're doing because you have that inner connection.
Mhm.
But yeah, so yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing process.
And then now it's all out there. I mean, you can study Kabbalah on
Oh,
the internet. It's
oh, there's limitless books on the pendulum,
yeah.
endless books on the pyramid. I do see books that relate to how to become more aware of your energy, but some of them are very intellectual. They don't
Mhm.
really give you the functional steps where you get really specific and train yourself to be sensitive to energy on a
I don't
day-to-day basis.
I don't think they're written by people who are conscious on the energy level.
Yeah, no, it's more like intellectual energy
Right.
talk. Yeah, that sounds right. And of
Right.
course, it's true intellectually, but it's because
Right.
it's functional. I mean, little things like when okay, it's in the evening, I'm going to sit down and relax a little bit, wind down from the day. I might turn something on. I think I want to watch a movie. Now, if I turn a movie on, I don't like the energy, I turn it off.
The energy.
Yeah. I go like that energy. I don't want to be in that energy right
Right.
now.
I
I
don't want
want
to
to,
get polluted by it.
yeah, I don't want to see, endless murders for the next 3 hours
Right. Yeah.
on screen. And I
Yeah.
go, no, let me, and sometimes I just say, I'm not even going to watch a movie. I'm going to meditate, read a book, take a walk. So a range of things come to my mind, like what's going to make me feel good
Mhm.
energetically.
Yeah.
And I go with that. Uh, or, I used to like to watch sports more. And over the years, I said, well, you just watched that game for like 3 hours and you're all angry. Your team lost.
Right. Right. Right.
are you really paying attention to the energy? Not really.
Right. You
My
just
old sports self came out, you know.
yeah, yeah. So,
But
so
I,
did Isidore, did he used to talk to you at all about just kind of like future, the future of the world, like where the world seemed to be heading, where society is going, where civilization's going? Did he prognosticate it all to you? Did he share any of that?
well, one image that just came to my mind right now was we're living in a time when we have a monkey flying a 747. So, in other words, we have all this technology, but most people really have no idea where it came from, how to use it wisely. And of course, we struggle with that with social media
Mm-hmm.
over the last, X number of years. And so the population isn't really up to speed, as he talked about it, to
Mm-hmm.
the level of consciousness of the technology.
Mm-hmm.
So I got the impression he wasn't real thrilled about how the future looked.
No, he used to, yeah, he used to say to me that we're heading for it, and this was back in the 1970s.
Yep, yep,
He was saying
70s.
that there's going to be so much chaos that
Mm,
they can't be a world war. Like they
yeah,
couldn't organize to have a
that's
world.
right. They wouldn't know how to push a button.
And then he also said something which is, kind of somewhat shocking for many people today. He said people are going to be shooting each other on the street.
Oh yeah, I remember saying that. In fact, I get the memory going in my mind right now. I'd walk out of there thinking, boy, that guy's negative. You know,
Right.
boy,
Yeah.
I don't know. Should I keep going to a guy that negative? But then I would settle down
Yeah.
and I would notice, well, wait a minute, let's take a look. What was he talking about? What are
Mhm.
the examples? And of course, he was a guy that could see. He was a seer.
He was a seer.
It wasn't just seeing in the moment. He could see a
Yeah.
bit of the future.
One
And
time I had a conversation with him that kind of shook me a little bit, and I never really knew what to make of it.
hmm,
And he said to me, Bobby, I went too deep.
hmm.
Did he ever mention anything like that?
Too deep in terms
Yeah.
of a spiritual development.
I didn't really get a reference.
I don't really know what he was talking about, but I have my own experience there. In fact, that's one of the things I've worked on over the years. If I attune myself and I don't get a sense of what he talked about, natural rhythm, you can really go up the frequencies, if you want to call up. I mean, deeper in the frequencies, more faster frequencies, more elevated frequencies, where you get so beyond this world, in a sense. I'm not even putting it in proper language. It's there's no language for it, but you're at a vibratory level that is pretty elevated. Then you look around and go like, why would I bother with this?
Yeah.
Why? But and I've met people like that. I
Yeah.
know I over the years had the good fortune of going to a Zen Buddhist monastery every so often just to get a retreat because I need a boost. Maybe every 2, 3, 4 years I would go there. Also, Vitvan's home farm, I would go there,
Hmm.
and I realized, okay, what do I want to do with that? And the guy at the Buddhist, some of the Buddhists would be so elevated, they really didn't want to be here anymore.
Mhm.
So in my case, I made a choice. My choice was, I thought, what can I do to live here to do the best I can, to share the best I can? So that required me to practice rhythmic alternation.
Mhm.
To go up the ladder, down the ladder, up the ladder, down the ladder.
Yeah.
Uh,
Isidore used to say, from the cave of the heart to the marketplace,
exactly.
back to the
He
cave of the heart.
he was very good with that, and I at first didn't really like the idea. I wanted to just be in the cave of the heart, but I realized the benefit of having that alternating energy where you can share it with the world, but also you learn from rubbing up against day-to-day life.
Yeah, well, that's why, after studying with him for a year or so, he suggested that I go out and join a construction crew. I was working construction in New York City.
Yeah, you did work in construction.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. No, that's one reason along the way I've come across different jobs, different professions, different things. Like, I mean, even the fact that I stumbled into becoming a teacher at a university, which is basically completely stumble into it. I go like, why? I don't really want to do this. But they're going back to being an energy being and say, you know what, this feels right. Intellectually, I don't like it. Seems like a lot of gobbledygook, and of course, higher education can be a mess verbally and a lot of other ways too. But I said, how can I navigate this with the tools that I've learned through Isidore, Vitvan, and all the other teachers before me? And it seemed like a wise path. So I guess my point is sometimes you just got to do what you got to do because you're learning from it. And you're rubbing it up against the world. But I did the best I could to alternate. Okay, I'm home now. Or I have even in the midst of it, just sit down for a minute. Be quiet, do some rhythmic breathing, get more in the now. Let go of any criticism you're making of other people, of yourself. And so you learn to practice the things in every situation. And it was very surprising how much you could do it if you put your mind on it and decided to do it. And of course, there's a limit. I mean, it depends on your level of sensitivity, because I meet people that are super sensitive.
Oh, yeah.
They have to be able to say, okay, that's enough.
Yeah. Before I would go to do my job at construction,
Yeah.
I would stop off at a place in Coney Island which is near Seagate, where we studied with Isidore, Nathan's, and I'd have two hot dogs. I'd eat two hot dogs in the morning just to coat myself.
Yep. And that's something that Izzy introduced me to. The fact is using something to lower your vibration somewhat to be able to not overly sensitive to whatever environment you're in, and use it wisely. Of course, you don't want to have 10 hot dogs in a row. You just eat something that kind of brings your vibe down a bit, because you're going to be around construction workers. What are they going to be talking and thinking about all day? Because I didn't work my dad had a construction company. So I was around that element, especially in the summertime. And it's like, there's not a lot we're going to be talking about here today.
Right. We're not talking about classical literature.
No. How did you measure this? Did you sweep it up?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So, but there's a great value in having, I know this fellow that in ancient Egypt, they talk about living the two worlds 200%.
Living the what?
The two worlds 200%. So it's not just only spirituality, not just only being a physical being. So going back to what you said about the depth, yes, I mean, he had tremendous depth. I mean, he could go as deep as you want. I mean, he didn't really talk about it that much because it was his individual path, but he was a visionary and a seer, and he could go up the frequency lines, up and down them. And obviously he knew how to handle everyday life. He knew how to handle people. He knew how to handle time for rest and relaxation and attunement and meditation. So to me, he was a 200% guy.
Yeah.
He wasn't just one dimensional.
Well, I felt guided to do this podcast, for us to do this on a monthly basis.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Because I feel like we're carrying on the lineage of this unknown sage.
Yeah.
Was among us that had such a totally momentous impact upon my life and on your life as well. I mean, all I've been doing since working with him was teaching and practicing and living, going up and down and discovering new ways and new paths opening up within that spectrum.
Oh yeah.
The wisdom that I think that there are many people on the planet right now who are ready to orient themselves toward living in harmonious vibration rather than trying to get things or get accolades that they think will take them to that higher vibration.
Fame and fortune.
Yeah, more and more people, I think. I wanted to just...
I see that. I see that all the time.
So that's the purpose of the podcast. The purpose of this podcast that was given to me, that I sensed that I wanted to contact you on, is you and I, again, are the only two people I know who took in the teachings this deeply and had this kind of a deep relationship with Isidore. You were like a big brother to me when I started. We've known each other for like 50 years now.
Oh my God, 50 years.
I guess pretty close. Well, you're an old guy. I'm not.
1970s. You're young. I'm old.
Yeah. So
my son says, "Don't call yourself old. Call yourself older."
Older. No. Well, there comes a point when you have to choose between time and eternity. So I'm ageless now.
Exactly.
But it still feels like we're the same that we were
Yeah,
Essences are the same.
just persisted on the path. And obviously, in both of our cases, Isidore Friedman, Izzy, as we called him, really set us on a path where if we chose to, we would have the tools.
Was
We would have
his name even was interested? Isidore Friedman. Yeah. And so in our next podcast,
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about astrology. Isidore
Oh,
had
yeah.
an energy approach to astrology.
Yes.
You became an astrologer. You are an astrologer, don't you?
I'm an astrologer all these years. I developed more and more and more and more. Yeah, an energy functional approach.
Right. And I
Yeah.
oriented more toward the Tarot and the Kabbalah.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And they're all similar in their own way. Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
is there anything you'd like to say as we wrap up? We've been on for about an hour.
Okay. I would just say that I would love if people were attracted to what we're doing and they find it up on YouTube, I guess, and people that I know, people you know, people that
How
just
can people contact you? How can people get connected to you and your work? And because I know on your Patreon, you have 25 of the notebooks of Isidore's
Yes.
we would copy by hand during his classes.
Yep.
So how do people get in touch with Dr. Greg Nielsen?
The best thing to do is go to patreon.com/spiritual frequencies. That's a lot to remember, but it's patreon.com/spiritual frequencies. And then it goes right to my site. It's kind of like a website. And there's a lot of introductory material there. But there's about 270 posts there and quite a bit of it. There's like 25 or 30 things from Izzy. I have his book up there.
Yeah, and if they want to find Isidore's writings on your site, they just go to search and put in Friedman, Fried.
Yeah, just put in Friedman, and his stuff will start coming up, and you can go on and on and on. I think we've got about 5 of his books, including Organics, The Law of the Breathing Spiral. I scanned that and put it in. Everything I had that I could find, I scanned and put in there because it was a way to get it go on to the next step. And thank you for bringing it up and sharing it, because I was saying, how are we going to get this out to people, because this is eternally wonderful.
Well, that's what we're doing. Anybody wants to get in touch with me, you can do that through my website, lovethemethod.com, or just boblancer.com. That's BLANCER.com. We'll probably get around to having some stuff in the description, some links and things
for in the YouTube thing below or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
To follow.
So I'm going to sign off now.
All right.
And at this point, I want to just say thank you very much. It's
Thank you.
Great connecting with you like this, and connecting with all the people, all the billions of people that are watching this podcast right now.
Putting out the energy.
Yes. And until we meet again.
Yes.
This will be posted on YouTube for people to view.
And we'll be talking.
Planning.
Okay. All right.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Adios.
Yeah.